We're going to move on into the Acts of the Apostles. The Acts of the Apostles. This week we'll talk about what happens in chapter 1, verses 12 through 26, where it deals with waiting, prayer, and leadership restoration. Again, as we look through the Acts of the Apostles, we kind of want to deal with it from its pericope distinctions and separations, where, you know, within a chapter a lot goes on, and so we kind of wanted to divide it into its author given separations. And so I want to look at Acts chapter 1 and read, let's just read from verse 12 up to verse 26.
Acts chapter 1. Then they went back to Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey. And when they came in, they went up into the upper room where they were staying, both Kepha, Jacob, and Yohanan, and Andrew, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, and Netanyahu, Jacob, and son of Alphi, and Simon the Zealot, and Yehuda, the son of Jacob. All these were continuing with one mind in prayer and supplication with the woman and Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, and with his brothers. And in those days, Kepha standing up in the midst of the top ones, and there was a gathering about 120, said, men and brothers, the scripture had to be filled, which the set apart spirit spoke before by the mouth of David concerning Yehuda, who became a guide to those who seized Yeshua, because he was numbered with us and did receive his share in this service. This one therefore purchased a field with the wages of the unrighteousness, and falling forward, he burst open in the middle, and all his intestines gushed out. And it became known to all those dwelling in Jerusalem, so that in their own language that field was called Dema, with that is field of blood. For it has been written in the book of Tehillim, let his dwelling lie waste, and let no one live in it, and let another take his office. What am I reading now? 21?
26.
26. Okay. It is therefore necessary that of the men who have been with us all the time that the Master Yeshua went in and out among us, beginning from the immersion of Yohanan to that day when he was taken up from us, that one of these should become a witness with us of his resurrection. And they put forward two, Joseph called Barsaba, who was also called Justus, and Mitahayu, Matthew, yeah, got you. Right. And praying, they said to Yahweh, who know the hearts of all, show which one of these two you have chosen to receive the share in this service and office of the emissary, from which Yehuda by transgression fell, to go to his own place. And they cast their lots, and the lot fell on Matthew, and he was numbered with the 11 emissaries.
Okay, very good.
My glasses.
Let us go back up here. Let's go back up to verse 12. Interesting thing that we see over here, if we start at verse 12 over here, this idea of a Sabbath day's journey. Remember, Luke is the author of the book of Acts, and he presents this as an idea, and the idea is known. You don't talk about what it is, how far it is. This is kind of known information, and not only is it known information, but it's kind of these are practiced things that they understand. This idea of a Sabbath day's journey. This is the thoughts that they had. Kind of started looking at this and saying, like, what exactly is a Sabbath day's journey? Does it talk about this in the Torah, or is this just something that is from the Pharisees or whatever? But regardless of where it begins, I think the way that it's inserted into the text, we can understand that this is something that was understood to the people. So I want to look at a couple things here. We can understand that these Second Temple era Israelites understood this as an idea. But where do they get this? Where do they get this thing from? How far is it? And so if we go over where they get it from, let's go back to where they get it from. I think that what we find out is we go back to Exodus. Let's go over to Exodus in 16. Because the idea is rooted in Torah, but it's not kind of formalized in Torah. It's formalized by rabbinic law, but it's rooted in Torah, and it's rooted over here in Exodus 16, verse 29.
Exodus 16, 29. See, because Yahweh has given you the Sabbath, therefore he is giving you bread for 2 days. On the 6th day, let each one stay in his place. Do not let anyone go out of his place on the 7th day.
Okay, do not let anyone go out of his place on the 7th day. Or some put it in the other sense, or let him stay within his place on the Sabbath day. That word there is mekomo.
Place.
Mekom. Look at that. Not there.
From place.
That word there, yes, very good. Properly a standing, that is a spot used widely of a locality, country, home, open place, room, space, what have you. And so the idea from the Torah is, now, I'm saying that this is where the idea of it begins, right? Because here, within these commands that are connected with manna, almost said matzah, manna, it was necessary for you to not go out and gather, right? So you going out and staying within your place had to do with you not going out and doing the thing that you would do on this other day that was connected with you gathering in the manna.
Yeah.
So
not that you gotta be in your place, like, you know, just
Stay in your station.
yes. In the context, it was you would go out to gather manna. And so it's saying for you to stay inside of your place as it relates to you going out to gather manna. But so what happens is from that perspective, you see kind of this establishment of a boundary, the concept of that being established. And so going along with that, they looked at things kind of like in Numbers 35 and 5. Oh, I see someone has here, put this up real quick. The comment here.
Well, this is, it says, why did they feel the need to keep the number of the emissaries at 12?
Okay, yes, we're definitely going to talk about that. I just wanted to just let it be known that we're going to talk about that. Okay, let's go to Numbers 35 and 5 because we're just kind of looking at the idea of this thing is known, it's a known thing. Luke don't talk about it because you don't need to expound on it because it's a known thing. Mm-hmm. But, we don't know what it is. Where'd they get it from? Why are they doing this? Even if we say that this is something that's contrived through rabbinic tradition, at this point, it didn't matter. They did it. It was a known thing. Okay, but let's look at how they got to it though. Read please Numbers 35 and 5.
Numbers 35 and 5. And you shall measure outside the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, and on the south side 2,000 cubits, and on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the north side 2,000 cubits. And the city is in the middle. This is to them the open land for the cities.
Okay, very good. So they take things like Joshua 3 and 4. What's it say over there in Joshua 3 and 4?
Joshua 3 and 4. Only keep a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, so that you know which way to go, for you have not passed over this way before.
Okay, very good. They take things that give you these parameters, and this is a good parameter, it seems. Let's use this. Let's use this 2,000 cubits and say that this is our place. This is the place that we need to stay within. If you go outside of this, you're outside of your place. You know what they do? They go and they take, it's interesting, they've done this in the city of Pittsburgh. They've done this in the city of Pittsburgh. They've created this border, this boundary that is a known place. And if you're within that place, I don't know whether they have wires up or strings up.
It's a wire that goes, it's the area around Pittsburgh.
Yes, and they call it the Erev Tehumin, which within it is basically your place. So any place inside of that is your place, and so you can walk around freely inside of that.
I got a picture of it.
Oh, you talking about in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I'll
Yes. And so inside of that boundary, this quote unquote sacred boundary, you're free to walk around because you're inside of your known borders. And so inside of that, you're able to walk freely. Now, originally it was about 2,000 cubits, which is a little over half of a mile. Is what they said would be a Sabbath day's journey. And so we in the city of Pittsburgh, I'm not sure, it's probably not 2,000 cubits, but it is a designated boundary that is used to say, I'm able to walk anywhere inside of this and be not walking too far. I'll be inside of a quote unquote Sabbath day's limit.
And you could carry stuff out of your house.
Yes.
Like so you could carry your
Bible.
Your Bible or whatever. if you go outside of that space, you can't carry anything out of that space on the Sabbath.
Yes, but and you know what they did. Now, what we're doing, we're just talking about the tradition that they come up with, and to say that at the time that Luke wrote this
Yes.
letter, this was something that was understood, even though it don't come straight from the Bible. It's rooted in the Bible, but it don't come straight from the Bible. But another thing that they do is if they beforehand go outside of that border and then they put some food outside of the border, they have proclaimed that place where that food is to be their place. So they could go there too.
Oh, if you put food there.
Yes, it might be outside of the line, but you place food outside, somewhere outside of the border where you beforehand know that you're gonna be. Say you lived outside of the border, I could take some food to your house, but beforehand leave it over there, and then when I go there on the Sabbath, your place is my place. So
they got a cheat code.
there's a cheat code. There's a cheat code that they come up with inside of this thing. It's very interesting.
Interesting.
This is kind of just a side tangent, but it's interesting just to note that within, if we go back to Acts chapter 12, chapter 1, verse 12, that it mentions this Sabbath day's journey, and your knowledge of the reader's knowledge of that is assumed because this is their life. This is the way that they go. But let's keep on going. If we look at verse 13, another thing that I thought was interesting, that in verse 13 it says, and when they came in, so they were out, they went up into the upper room where they were staying. And then it names all the people, the 11 disciples, and also the women that were with them. But it says the upper room. It's interesting because in the Greek, the definite article is there. So some translations may say in a upper room, which really could make it be anywhere. In that time, it was kind of a known kind of architectural thing for there to be kind of these upper floors. Say if your house was built in such a way where it had a flat top, sometimes they would make that flat top be another place, another room on top, basically. And they would use those rooms for kind of family type gatherings or what have you. And it wasn't something that was limited to those who had a lot of money. Like it was totally normal for a regular house owned by regular people. I'm saying regular, like just, you didn't have to be rich. I'm saying you were regular for you to have an upper room. So for you to say that they went to a upper room, that's saying that they could be anywhere. Mm-hmm. They could be anywhere. Also, there are some thoughts that the upper room that they describe in Acts chapter 1, verse 13, some people say it's the temple. And they talk about it being a temple because later we see that there's so many people there.
They all fit.
Yes.
That is one of the things I've heard too.
Yes, they've said that. But if we stay right here in verse 13, I think the important component to this structure of this sentence is the definite article, the upper room. Because it talks about them being in an upper room when they stayed for Passover. Because they, as the disciples, they're not from Jerusalem. Yeshua had them go out and find a place for them to be, and that upper room was a place where they were renting from a local person, an Airbnb of sorts. for them to stay in. And it was nice enough for them to have their little intimate situation. They, at that time, were kind of on the run, but all of them fit in there, right? But it was just the 12 of them, right? And so it makes sense to say that this was not only a private residence, but also one that they frequented. The upper room. I guess it's not necessarily necessary that they were in the same exact place where they had the Last Supper at, but I think it is it makes sense for them to be in a private residence as opposed to, people really say that the upper room is a chamber in the tabernacle, in the temple. I'm saying that can't be true. Nobody's spending the night at the tabernacle, at the temple. There's certain people can only be in certain places at the temple, and so there's women there with them. Right? When we go down later, there's people from out of town there who could be where they from. They're not all Israelites, and we keep on reading. And so there's criteria for entrance into certain areas in the temple, where I'm saying that let's just erase that from being part of what we say that this upper room is. It might not be where the Last Supper, quote unquote, was. I'm saying that it probably is, but if it isn't, it's something like unto it, because you have to figure what's going on there. There's patient, fervent prayer that's going on there. And we look at verse 13. When they came in, they were out. They were doing whatever they did in the daytime. They were out. When they came in, they went into this room where they were staying at, all of them. Yes. And while they were there, they were continuing in, as verse 14, all of these were continuing with one mind in prayer and supplication. They were there on a mission, and the mission included prayer and meditation upon what they were expecting, which was the fulfillment of what it was that the Most High said was going to happen, which was the coming of the Ruach HaKodesh. Yeah. And for them, what is this thing going to look like? How is this thing going to be manifest? Is it going to happen? They're praying with expectation, knowing that it's going to happen. What's going to be next? Mm-hmm. Right? And so they want to be sure not to miss this thing that's coming. They want to be sure that they're prepared properly, them and the women and the mother of Yeshua, which, by the way, I think this is one of the final times that we even see her mentioned at all. Mm-hmm. We don't know if she dies shortly after, or she's not involved in any significant events or whatever, but we know at least here that she's mentioned, she's there at the command of the Master Yeshua to wait and to they're commanded to wait, but what they do is stay in prayer and supplication. I think it's interesting that they say that they're there in one mind. Right? They're there together in anticipation of what it is that's going to happen. And again, they don't know exactly what it is that's going to happen, but they're staying there in obedience to the command that was given through Yeshua, knowing that they're waiting for that promise of the Spirit,
Yes.
that promise of an empowerment that's coming from on high.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's also interesting. I think about how before this, I don't know if they all could have been in one room together without quarreling or without having something to say. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that within them before, you know. And it's like, but they're all in one accord and they're all praying. And I think about when Yeshua said, when the bridegroom is with them, that, you know, they don't have to do all of that, you know, but that when he was going to be away from them, then they would, you know. And it just seems like, you know, this is like a short time here where they all have their acts together.
Yeah, so we see kind of these semblances of maturation
Yes.
that have developed with the disciples, where it's not a unrealistic thing to see them as they come together, which they stay together all of the time, to within themselves come up with some argument about this or that.
Or, yeah.
And so the writer here, Luke, helps us to see that all of these were continuing. They were continuing with one mind in prayer and supplication. They were seeking after the Most High. They did whatever they had to do throughout the day. They come back to this place, not knowing what exactly was going to be, but knowing that that Yeshua said, "You wait here for this day to happen, and the promise of the Spirit will come." And so they're waiting. They're not only just waiting, but they're praying unto the Father to help them to know what it is to do. And so we see them doing that with the women and Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, and his brothers. So it's a few of them, but it's not hundreds of them. It's not even all of the disciples, because there's many disciples, but there's only 12 special ones. Right? And for whatever reason, Yeshua chose this number of 12 disciples.
I mean, you figure the 12 tribes of Israel,
mean, that's-
and 12 gates, 12, you know.
I mean, yeah, right? You would think that, this is some kind of correlation between that. But we see here, I think this is a good example of the fact that we see here that for whatever reason, it becomes necessary for the one that was lost to be replaced. Like, why can't there just be 11? Why couldn't there just have been 11 disciples? Why does he have to be replaced? Briefly, before we go over to verse 15, I just want to say that when we think about the idea of these ones who were in this upper room, them being on one accord, they're functioning as the original body of Yeshua. They're functioning here as the original, the OGs of the body of Yeshua. There's no body of Yeshua in existence prior to this. right here. These ones. The disciples along with the women. I think when it says the women, it's talking about the same women that, here let's go over to Luke 23 and 49. It's so interesting when we think about the fact that Luke wrote this, because again, this is just part 2 of the gospel according to Luke. It's just part 2, it's just volume 2. And so the things that he said over in volume 1, he don't got to go into those things again because he went into them already in the beginning. Right? This is volume 2. Those things are still true. Let's go over to Luke 23 and 49. What's that say?
Luke 23, verse 49. And all those who knew him and the women who followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching this.
Okay, so when Yeshua was, in this time being judged and beat and getting ready to be crucified, there was women that followed him from Galilee that were standing by watching. Who was it? It probably was Mary Magdalene, Mary the wife of Cleophas, and Salome, the wife of Zebedee, right? These were the ones that said that was with, that was at the torture stake. Some people say that the women includes potentially if some of the apostles had wives, they were included. But there were a particular group of women that hung around that were part of this kind of inner circle that are present here in this upper room. Okay. So the original body of Yeshua, the original ones that are waiting for instructions from Yeshua, waiting to see what it was that they must do in order to continue the kingdom of Elohim. So 15, I think, is an interesting point to be said, going along with this idea that the upper room isn't the temple. The upper room is the upper room. Verse 15, it says, and in those days. And in those days is a transition point. Standing in the midst of the top ones, they're gathered about 120 people. This is not in the upper room. It's at some point in those days that they were waiting. And by the way, the upper room was really for lodging. It was for prayer and supplication. But remember, they went up in after they was out. So they're going out and being outside during the day. And then they're going back in the evening and lodging and praying. But in those, again, logistically speaking, the private dwellings wasn't built for 120 people. Okay. These structures weren't structured in that way. It's implausible. I wouldn't say impossible for 120 people to fit in a upper room. So I'm saying that, and in those days is a transition point from how they were in the upper room doing this or that. But during that time, while they was outside, Peter stands in the midst of the top ones. And these people gathered around. There was a gathering of about 120, and these ones aren't random. These people aren't random people. Because again, I would say all of the disciples of Yeshua are waiting. but the intimate circle, you know, they wait together. But then now the rest of the disciples, there's plenty of disciples, you know, that are there. But of those, all of the disciples, there's 12 that are kind of the favorite
Core.
ones, the core. And even within the core, there's a 3.
Yeah.
And even within the 3, there's a 1. Why is Peter the one that starts talking? You know, Peter's the one. Peter is the one of the 3 of the 12. Right? He's part of the 3. He's part of the 12. But he is the one. I'm saying Peter's the guy. He's the one, if they're all standing there, he's the one that's about to start talking. And so he stands up in the midst of everyone and he begins to say this speech. So I'm saying 15 and in those days is kind of our pivot point that puts us in those days, but out of the upper room, but still in the window of time waiting for the promise.
Yeah.
And so he begins to talk about Judas.
Why does he start with the bad?
Well, I'm saying, why does he start with the bad one? Because they have a void in their situation. There's only 11 when there's supposed to be 12.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so they got this issue. He knows that the time is coming, and it's imperative that they deal with the fact that there's only 11. There needs to be 12. Yeshua set up this thing where he literally chose 12 disciples. And there couldn't be 11. They're maintaining this. The scripture doesn't tell us why they're maintaining it, but you see that there is this urgency that's within them. In that time when they're waiting, they're fervently praying, they're supplicating, they're waiting for this time to happen. They're trying to prepare the best that they can, and part of their preparation is dealing with the fact that there's only 11 of us, even though there's 120 of us. Right? There's all of these disciples that are there, but there needs to be 12 disciples
core
of the
members.
core members, yes. And so when it said, can you read 16 and 17 again?
Men and brothers, this scripture had to be filled, which the set apart Spirit spoke before the mouth of David concerning Yehuda, who became a guide to those who seized Yeshua, because he was numbered with us and did receive his share in this service.
And so I want to say that Judas, the betrayer, became the betrayer. Because at some point there was 12. And the only way we get 12 is with him in it. And so he mattered. He was part. He received his share in this service. Judas did. He was out there doing the work. He was chosen by the master. He was part of the 12. They didn't need to get another one, back whenever he was doing whatever he did. He kind of is in all the way up until he's out.
Back when he was just counting the money.
Yeah, back when he just was holding the money. Right? And so Judas, no matter how much we look at him and think about, his divine purpose being this one that betrays, at the same time, in order for him to betray, he had to actually be part of them.
Right.
And so 12 includes Judas. He was part of the 12. Another interesting thing is I think that 18, remember this is a letter from Luke to this Theophilus. And so 18 and 19, even though in some versions we have the parentheses, this is a parenthetical insertion here. This is a parenthetical interjection. And I'm saying that because when we look at this one, therefore, can you read 18 and 19?
This, therefore, purchased a field with the wages of unrighteousness, and falling forward, he burst open in the middle, and all his intestines gushed out. And it became known to all those dwelling in Jerusalem, so that in their own language, that field was called Hagad Demah. I said that wrong, but this is the field of blood.
Okay, and so this place where Judas hangs himself and falls and dies and his guts burst open, that is saying that he purchased this land with his payment that he makes. It kind of becomes notorious. This place does, and it gets a name. This field of blood, right, where nobody lives there. It's this place that becomes desolate, and so it becomes notorious in 40 days. It becomes notorious. At this part, does the word get back to the disciples? What exactly happens to Judas? Do they know at this point his fate? Or were they with him and then they wasn't? I mean, I guess potentially the word could have gotten back to them about what happened. Oh, they found Judas over in this field over here. He hung himself. He died.
I mean, that sounds like that's something that would travel. His guts busted open.
I feel like that part of it could. I'm saying that part of it they could know, but this place becoming renowned now and renamed and known for this to all those that dwell in Jerusalem inside of 40 days. I think this is a thing that Luke adds to the narrative, and then 20 is Peter talking again. So it's Peter talking, 16, 17, 18 is Luke adding to the thing, and then 20 is Peter talking back again.
So Luke basically adding that later on.
Yeah. Right, because he's, this again, he's recalling back
Narration.
what happened. Yeah. Okay, so Peter does this interesting thing with verse 20. Can you read verse 20?
For it has been written in the book of Tehillim, let his dwelling lie waste, and let no one live in it, and let another take his office.
Peter is doing some kind of midrashic interpretations over here. When we go back to Psalms, and say, let's look at Psalm 69:25. Let's go back and read that verse. Actually, let's read 25 through 28.
What verse? What chapter?
Psalm 69 verses 25 through 28.
Psalm 69. 25. Let their encampments be deserted. Let no one dwell in their tents. For they persecute him whom you have stricken, and talk about the pain of those you have wounded, and crookedness to their crookedness. add crookedness to their crookedness, and let them not enter into your righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living, and not be written with the righteous. But I am poor and in pain. Let your deliverance, O Elohim, set me up on high.
Okay, that's very good. So the writer here, I think, is giving us kind of a principle. It's not necessarily talking about Judas here. When it happens that you, whoever you might be, get on the other side of the Most High and become qualified to receive his wrath, this is what happens to you. Let your dwelling place lie in waste, and let no one live in that place. Let your name be blotted out of the book of the living, and not be written with the righteous. Peter is causing Judas to fit into this verse over here, not necessarily meaning that the verse is like originally written for Judas, but he's recalling this verse, kind of explaining the end of Judas, where he fits into this, and the place where he dies kind of prophetically fits into this situation, right? Where this place that has become now Luke, understanding what was said by Peter, is able to put that parenthetical part before he says this part, right? But that's kind of what happened, and it's showing us kind of the prophecy kind of being fulfilled. But Peter is bringing this thing out with Judas in mind. First of all, the fact that he was part of us, but the thing that he does is contrary to us. So therefore, he gets placed on the outside. He dies in this terrible way, and he also quotes Psalms 109, verse 8, which he says there, a part of it, let another take his office. Like, he's saying all of this in connection to Judas. And he's using these verses here to kind of to make a point. Not necessarily that when we read these verses in their own context that they're talking about Judas or Messiah or whatever. But there's kind of covenantal truths that exist within these verses that fit the situation that's happened with Judas. And so he's saying that he must be replaced. Judas, who was good, he was good. He was numbered as 12. He was part of it. He counted. It wasn't like he was this mole the whole time. Otherwise, there's 11, right? If we say that he wasn't true the whole time, then the numbers don't work, right? But it's necessary. Let's go over to Psalm 109 and just read the first 8 verses here.
Psalm 109. Do not be silent, O Elohim of my praise, for the mouth of the wrong and the mouth of the deceiver have opened against me. They have spoken against me with a false tongue. They have surrounded me with words of hatred, and they have attacked me without cause. In return for my love, they accuse me while I am in prayer. And they repay me evil for good, and they hate and hatred for my love. Appoint over him one who is wrong, and let an accuser stand at his right hand. When he is judged, let him be found wrong, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few, let another take his office.
Okay, so we look here when we get to the verse that Peter kind of hints at, let another take his office, and his days be few. It's talking about this one who's talking against the righteous. But he's talking about, he's putting Judas in that situation. But I think that the concept that exists, the covenantal principle that exists, is that when there is a one who is doing as the Most High calls for him to do, when he falls, another's gonna come and take his place. I mean, look at, say for instance, Saul, the king, where he is placed in this position of king of Israel. He falls, but it's necessary for another to come and take his place. It's just because the one happens to come into this this bad place, to be kind of oversimplifying the situation. It doesn't mean that we don't need there to be this place to be filled. It needs to be filled. And so we see Peter again using these verses kind of to make his point about Judas. He was with us. That was proven. He paid his dues. Yeshua made there be 12 of us. We have to restore that before this promise comes. So I think that the disciples, namely Peter, understands the necessity to have this restoration of the 12 come together. He understands. Yeshua never talks about it. Yeshua never talks about this idea of, there's 12 of you guys. But he puts them together. He affirms the importance of the 12 by the simple fact that when they go about, those were the ones that, they heard the special teachings of Yeshua. And so he kind of affirms the importance of the inner circle of the 12, and so much so that Peter has it in his mind to say, we need a replacement. And so they seek to get one. But there's criteria. There's criteria to do so, which is so interesting. And the criteria, it says in 21 and 22. Can you read 21 and 22 there?
Back in Acts.
Acts, yes.
Acts 1:21. It is therefore necessary that of the men who have been with us all the time that the Master Yeshua went in and out among us, beginning from the immersion of Yohanan to the day when he was taken up from us, that one of these should become a witness with us of his resurrection.
Okay, so you had to not only be one of the many disciples that walked around with them, but you had to have been there to actually see Yeshua immersed by John, the immerser. So if you came along the next day after that, then you are this. I feel like by 23, when all of the criteria is given, I feel like these are the only two that fit the criteria, that go all the way back.
There's 100 and something people, and he's like, all right.
Yeah, out of all these people who became disciples,
fix these criteria.
at least 70 of the 100, at least 70 of those 120 are disciples. So it don't even got to be because the women are there. I don't know if they're counted or not, but of the 120, I'm saying that 70 of those probably were disciples. But among those, you had to be there with us all the way back to the beginning.
Yes.
And remained that whole time that he was with us until he was taken up. So maybe there was some who was there, most of the time. They kind of faded out, then they came back.
Or maybe whenever he said, you got to eat my body and drink my blood.
Yes, and then so that happens, and then maybe after he dies, it's like, oh man, it come back. And then maybe they was like, oh man, it really was a Messiah. We're going to come back. If you left whenever he said, eat my body and drink my blood, and then came back, you was off. And so you had to have been there from the beginning and stayed the whole time until he ascended. And that person would be one of the ones who will become a witness with us. Oh, and you had to witness the resurrection. So all of that, resurrection up until the ascension, you had to fit that criteria. And so I think it seems to me that these two people who they chose from, Joseph and Matthew here, not the tax collector, were the only two who fit the criteria, which is a small number, which it seems like is a pretty big criteria. You would have to have been there the whole time, essentially the whole time. But that was the necessary requirements. That's what you needed to do. You had to have been here the whole time and stayed faithful this whole time. And so the way in which they find which one to choose is by casting lots, which is so interesting. Because where do they even get this from to cast lots? Like, we find the two people that's going to replace, that's going to be actually the 12th disciple. You're gonna make us whole again, as far as the 12 is concerned. And the way that we choose this is by casting lots.
Yeah, it's fair. Because now it takes out human preference.
Yes. But so it's interesting when we think about this idea of casting lots. Its practice is found in Scripture, but it's not a thing that's talked about in terms of I command you to do this or that.
Yeah.
But we see its practice in Scripture, most notably Leviticus chapter 16. If we look at 16, let's look at Leviticus 16, 7 and 8. This is a very kind of important use of the casting of lots. But again, we don't see the Most High saying, when you want to do this, I don't know why I'm talking in this voice. When you want to do this specific thing, you'll do it by way of casting lots. But he does this thing, this most curious thing that is part of the most holiest day on the annual calendar involves a casting of lots. Leviticus 16, 7 and 8.
And he shall take the 2 goats and let them stand before Yahweh at the door of the tent of appointment. And Aaron shall pass lots for the 2 goats, one lot for Yahweh and the other lot for Azazel.
Okay, very good. So when we see over here this idea of the casting of lots for the Day of Atonement, to choose which goat is going to be killed and which one is going to be remain alive. And so we see over here in the Torah the application of the casting of lots. And so when we think about what's happening with the disciples, it's almost like we see this thing, which we don't see this after this idea of casting of lots. Because again, first of all, the disciples coming together in the first place are waiting for the promise of the Spirit. They can directly speak to the Spirit and through the Spirit receive a revelation given directly to them. But in a way, as you brought up, the idea of taking the human element out of it, they prayerfully say, we have these 2 choices. Which one should it be? We want to say that whichever one whichever one the dice lands on, I don't know why I'm saying dice, whichever one the dice lands on, this is what the Most High is choosing for us. And so they're taking it out of their own hands and saying that whichever one is chosen through this method, which is a scripturally accepted method of casting lots.
Scripturally approved.
Yes, as a scripturally approved method. This is how they choose it. But I think that what we see is that this is a way of choosing that's without the Spirit. Because they don't have this. They don't have the Spirit indwelling.
Yeah.
I think the thing of the Spirit helps for us to be able to have the Spirit of the Most High's character within us, where we're able to come together and, make a decision based on what the Spirit is saying for us to actually do. But them, not that this is wrong or whatever, but it's right. But I think that the way in which they do it is a way that I think just shows where they are in terms of their not fully equipped spiritually to make this important decision, and so they do it in this way that's I don't want to say it's less spiritual, but it does in fact take the human element away.
I don't know. You got a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't feel that in my spirit."
I mean, people's inability to lean on and hear from the Spirit of the Most High can be a situation. But I think that best case scenario, those with the Ruach HaKodesh allowing for the Spirit to work in and through you, you should be able to make Spirit-led decisions But you're absolutely right. We do experience people saying, the Spirit said this, the Spirit said that, and in the meanwhile, the Spirit
That's it.
didn't say nothing.
That's right.
It's so interesting when you look at this one that was chosen, right? They cast the lots and they choose this one. We don't hear from this guy ever again. Tradition says that tradition is not even consistent in terms of what happens to this Matthew person. One tradition says that he dies of old age in Jerusalem. Another says that he was martyred in Jerusalem, stoned and beheaded.
Oh, wow.
Another says that he goes on a mission to Ethiopia and is crucified there. And so, but the scriptures that we know of, the Bible itself, don't speak of him again. And so his kind of scriptural relevance exists only to the point of him kind of bringing a balance back to the original order set in place by Yeshua, which I think is a pretty significant place. Because even if we don't hear nothing else about him or anything, we know that his addition to the apostles does in fact restore the proper order that was set in place as there being 12 disciples. Mm-hmm. Now we can talk about, why 12. I think the most logical thing is what we've said already in terms of kind of how it shows this idea of, there's 12 tribes, and the 12, that number 12 remains. Even when some are added, some are taken away to maintain that 12. Mm-hmm. And so that 12 is always maintained throughout the scripture, no matter what happens. And so we see kind of the consistency of that with the disciples, where let's just say Peter knows that it's necessary to keep this like this. There's a certain criteria that must be, if we're able to find someone who's able to fit that criteria. I'm sure if they wasn't, they were able probably to say, well, maybe you wasn't with us the whole time, but you was there.
The resurrection.
He comes up with this criteria,
And nobody said, well, how'd you get that?
What are they going to say? I think that what we see is, which I think is pretty amazing. What we see with Peter is the fact that, there is a maturation that happens with Peter. We do see that he understands what his place is, and he stands in that place. Yeah. He knows that things need to be said, and he's the one that stands up and says the things. He knows that we must choose another guy to get in here, and he says what needs to be said in order to reestablish this order of the disciples. And so it's interesting that as part of their waiting, as part of their preparation for the promise to come, that Peter decides within himself, or is told
what the criteria is.
Well, what the criteria is to be, and the fact that this thing is necessary to happen, that it's necessary for this thing to be done, and he gets the thing done. And so it's so interesting when we look at this kind of thing as a whole. When we think about Peter moving forward, kind of being that kind of the one that's kind of standing out in the front, along with all these things. It's so interesting that this guy who just who really, that thing that happened with him could have been the thing that just pushed him over the edge with the whole thing of denying Yeshua. Yeshua saying he was going to do it, and then he ended up doing it and all of this. And Yeshua kind of, when he comes back, he kind of builds him up and he builds Peter up and pushes him forward, I think. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. He accepts his role and he stands in it. And so it's so interesting when we look at his actions in what he does in preparation for the promise to come, is that he wants to make sure that all of the things are in order to receive the promise. Like I feel like his actions prove that he thinks that this is something that we got to do in order for what Yeshua, to be ready for, at least, to be ready for what Yeshua said is going to happen. We got to do this thing right now. Like, this thing got to be done. And, he does it. And so I think that when we kind of think about how this kind of a thing, works inside of us, the Most High, he has given a promise. He said what he was going to do. But there's also a place within the people that they have a role to play in all of this. It's necessary for the people to prepare. It's necessary for the people to stand and wait. Not only wait, but wait in anticipation for the coming of the promise, but also to prepare themselves. Like, Peter knew that it was necessary for them as a unit to fill that void that was created by Judas. And he goes out and he initiates the action that brings about this restoration within the disciples. And again, if all that that Matthew does is restore that thing, which, as far as we know, that's all he did do. But that was an important component, and he's marked for eternity at this point as the 12th disciple.
That we never hear of again.
That we never hear of again. Yeah, and it couldn't have been Paul either. Couldn't have been Paul.
Because Paul wasn't there.
Paul wasn't there. He wasn't
Still
there.
not there right now.
He never was there. He don't fit he don't
He
fit
has seen
the
none.
criteria. I mean, he's not physically there at this time,
Yes.
but it wasn't like they could have just had 11 all the way up until Paul comes on the scene. Like, Peter, I think there's an urgency within him we got to get this thing done in this time while we're waiting.
It's also interesting to me that it didn't get done whenever Yeshua was having his conference with them. Because Yeshua could have just picked another disciple right then and there, or apostles.
I think that is interesting, but I think to me that also kind of strengthens this idea of this body of Yeshua. This thing that Yeshua has a purpose for his body, but he also has requirements for his body to maintain things to a certain level for him. Like, we have the job of advancing the kingdom through the Spirit of the Most High. And he don't he don't always say all of the steps. Peter don't say, well, the Spirit of the Most High told me this. He just said, we got to make this right, as if it was wrong. And nobody said that he was wrong for doing it. In fact,
Everybody agrees.
it makes sense. And so I think that as the body of Messiah, I think the necessity is for us to be so connected to the Spirit of the Most High that our behavior begins to, our actions kind of exemplify his character, and we don't have to go around and say, thus says Yahweh, this or that. But the thing that you're doing is so much in line with what is, it just makes sense. It makes sense for them to go to maintain the 12. He didn't have to say, well, this says the Most High. He does come up with he came up with some precepts to justify what he was doing, but it makes sense for this thing to be maintained. All right. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, or comments about any of this?
Why did you have to say the blood part twice?
That was a blood fight.
Blood.
Oh, you're about whatever. She's talking about whatever Judas talked about him dying. Or
Oh, I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened. I mean,
Yeah, but
it was definitely a gruesome thing. But that's what happened. Judas, he died a terrible death. And
yeah,
that's what it was.
it's just to me, it's just kind of interesting that he kind of started on. I mean, it started on a low note from amongst them, but I guess it's like, okay, we got to go back and fix this situation that was created. So
What you mean started on the low note?
like, he's not starting on a note of Yeshua's resurrection, essentially. You know what I mean?
Oh, you mean Peter at this time, you mean?
Yes, Peter. His
Yes, because they got an issue.
remarks is on the
Yes,
the
because
issue.
they have a pertinent issue that needs to be dealt with before they can move forward. In Peter's mind, this is so important that they can't do nothing else without taking care of this thing first. Knowing that that the promise is imminent, they know that the promise is imminent. Before we go forward, we got to fix this. So they fixed it.
no, I don't think that really fixed anything.
No, they absolutely fixed it.
All right. We'll talk to her.
Okay, very
We'll talk
good.
to her.
All right, that being said, if there's no more, we'll be done for now talking about this part of the Acts of the Apostles. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to talk more about the exciting things that go on with the Acts of the Apostles. But until then, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
This is